Hey Gateway kids, it's Nick. Life is very strange at the moment, isn't it? But I am so grateful and glad that we have clever computery ways of connecting even when we're all in our own homes. We're in April now, which means it's nearly time for Easter. Give a cheer if you're looking forward to Easter. Yay! Okay. Easter is such an important time for us because it's when we get to remember that Jesus died on the cross and then rose to life again. Now, all of that is coming up next week. This week, we have a different story to look at. Now, this story happened about a week before Jesus died and rose again. And it's the story of how Jesus arrived in Jerusalem. Now, if you're watching this on Sunday, you may know that this Sunday has a special name, it being the last Sunday before Easter. And that name is linked to this thing. If you know the name, shout it out. I can't hear you, so I'm just going to tell you. It's Palm Sunday. Happy Palm Sunday, everybody. But why? Why is it called Palm Sunday? Let's find out. It was about a week before the Passover. Now, do you remember the story of Moses? Passover was the meal that the Jews had to celebrate the time when God helped them escape slavery in Egypt. It's a bit like communion. So, Jesus and his disciples were travelling to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover, even though Jesus knew that the Pharisees wanted to arrest and kill him. Now, the Pharisees, they were religious leaders who were meant to be teaching and showing people who God was. Only Jesus thought they were doing a bad job of it, and he told them so, in public. So they hated his guts. Now, before Jesus and his disciples got to Jerusalem, they reached the Mount of Olives, which is a big old hill opposite Jerusalem. There were two villages nearby, the village of Bethany and the village of Bethphage. Anyway, Jesus called two of his disciples over and said, "Lads, here's the plan. You two head into the village and you'll find a young donkey that no one has ever ridden on. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Oi, why are you untying that donkey?' you just tell them, 'The Lord has need of it and will send it back immediately.'" The two disciples were like, "Yeah, bro, let's go." So off they went into the village. Was it the village of Bethany? Was it the village of Bethphage? I don't know. So in they went, looking about, and they're like, "Aha! There is a donkey." So they began untying it. "Oi!" shouted the owner of the donkey. "Why are you untying that donkey?" The Lord has need of it." "Okay, cool," said the owner, and the two disciples headed back to Jesus with the donkey. When they got back, they threw their coats onto the donkey's back, and Jesus sat on it. Then they set off towards Jerusalem. Now let's pause for a moment. Why did Jesus want to ride on a donkey? Well, it all has to do with what was written hundreds of years ago before he was born. One of God's prophets called Zechariah wrote that God's promised king, the one who would come to save his people, would come to Jerusalem riding on a donkey. By riding on a donkey, Jesus was making an announcement that he was this promised king. But he did it in a way that only the Jews would realise. Clever. This, of course, is not how you'd expect a king to arrive. But Jesus, he's a very different sort of king. Back to the story. As they got closer and closer to Jerusalem, a huge crowd gathered, and they were all very excited. They threw their coats onto the road and cut palm branches, there you go, there's the palms, from the local trees and threw them onto the road as well. Then they began praising God, shouting, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And they said other things like that. Now you remember those angry Pharisees that I mentioned before? Well, there were some of those in the crowd, and they were annoyed by what everyone was doing, and they called out to Jesus, "Hey you, teacher, this is unacceptable. Give your disciples a good talking to." Jesus replied, "I tell you, if they were all silent, then the very stones would cry out." And on he went, riding into Jerusalem. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is how Jesus arrived in Jerusalem. 1 week later, the world was changed forever.